Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Hello Hot Flash. I am super excited to be here today with Jessika Brown. Jess, how are you doing today?
I am so excited to be here. Thanks so much for having me, Stephanie.
Yeah, it's been a while. We talked and then life happened and we didn't get a chance to actually connect for the podcast interview. So I'm so excited that we finally were able to connect, and I'm super excited for my audience to hear what you have to share with us today.
Awesome. Well, excited to be here. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm going to start by introducing you and then we'll dive into some questions. All right. So Jess is a boy mom. Shout out to boy moms. She's a wife, boss, and she is super passionate about making peace with food. As a registered dietitian, she has been working in the health industry for the last 15 years. Jess oversees a medical nutrition therapy clinic, is an adjunct professor for nutrition at the University of New Mexico, and host of the Fuel Her Awesome podcast. She currently specializes in sports nutrition and eating disorder treatment, which is truly a blend of her two passions. If she could share one thing with people about food, it would be to listen more to your body and less to the noise. When she isn't working, you will find her somewhere in the mountains with her family and with a good cup of coffee in hand. I love
I
that.
have a cup of coffee in hand right now.
I know. That is awesome. That's awesome, Jess. So tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so thank you so much for that introduction. I am a registered dietitian that loves to help people with making peace with food, like you said. And because I'm a sports dietitian too, I've really kind of morphed into this like this passion about how to like use nutrition science for the good, and use it in productive ways instead of, I think there's a lot of noise and fear-based information about nutrition out there. And so yeah, I love to help people like filter that through what's healthy for them. So yeah, that's my professional career. And I love that you included that piece about the cup of coffee, because that is me in a nutshell. Like, coffee is my love language. And
I love that.
whether I'm in the mountains or here with you, I am generally loving sharing coffee with people.
You have a special brew that we can all learn from.
Oh man, I am a huge fan of local roasts.
Oh,
And so I'm so blessed. I work out in the mornings, and one of the guys who works out in this cohort I work out with, he roasts coffee locally. And so he brings me coffee. I'm a part of I got a subscription. He brings me coffee every week, all the different like local roasts that he does. And so, yeah, he's Candlestick Coffee. You can order from him, like a little plug for Candlestick Coffee.
I'll put that in the show notes as well.
Awesome.
Love that.
Awesome.
You talk a lot about things like intuitive eating and empowered eating, and that may be foreign to some folks. So tell us, what is intuitive eating and why do you recommend it?
That's a great question. So, intuitive eating, it started back in like the early 90s, and it's really this balance of listening to something called interoceptive awareness, which is your ability to read your body's cues,
Mm.
and balancing that with gentle, intentional nutrition. And why it was so groundbreaking when it first came out was because it was completely different than this very like strict, regimented, like the rules around nutrition, like you have to eat this, you have to be afraid of gaining weight and getting heart disease and all the horrible things that can happen as you age. This was the first time that a model came out that was like, no, 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 let's just pause and actually like listen to
Mm.
what our body says. Whereas before it was like a detachment from our body, right? It was this top-down rule-driven approach to nutrition. Intuitive eating is really rejecting that and reconnecting with your body. So it's the actual model of intuitive eating, which was put together by Evelyn Tribble and Elise Resch. They're both dietitians, amazing, groundbreaking work in the field of nutrition, but they put together 10 principles to walk people through. So if anyone hasn't read the intuitive eating book, it is an incredible read and I highly recommend it, because it'll walk you through these 10 steps of how to like move away from more of like the diet culture stuff, the rule driven food eating. They call it like reject the diet mentality, like get back into your body, and then ending it with, now we still need to like be intentional with what we eat, right? Like there's still a responsibility that comes with eating and caring for our body. So it's an incredible model. And I think, yeah, it was groundbreaking. And the thing I like about it is now that it's been around for a couple decades, there's a lot of research behind it. And the research is really showing us that people who get in touch with their body and listen to their body, they're actually healthier. They lose weight more sustainably. They long-term see less of those health comorbidities that are associated with poor nutrition. So really cool stuff happening there.
If you can think of one off the cuff, one of the practices that they give, or a piece of advice that they give in the book that can help people start the process.
Yeah. So they do it in a specific order, but I think probably the most powerful one is the feel your fullness. I think a lot of times we are so worried about not eating too much or not enough. Like we get so, disconnected again from our body. But I love how they talk about actually just like discovering satisfaction and learning what full feels like in your body, not being afraid of being full, rather honoring your fullness and finding a balance. Because, I think like one of the things as someone who works like more on the emotional side of food, we talk a lot about eating foods you enjoy and enjoying the experience of eating. But one thing that can get lost in that is like the purpose of eating is to fuel your body. That is still a purpose, right? And so honoring your fullness, all it means is like learning how to eat in a way that like you fuel your body and have more energy afterwards. You don't want to take a nap after you eat lunch. Like you eat lunch so you can keep going through your day. Not so that, if I could take a nap at 3:00 every day, it'd be fabulous, but yeah, right.
Yeah, that's awesome. So it's a thought behind this applicable to all people, to especially the target audience here, people who are perimenopausal or postmenopausal. Will this help them as well?
Yeah, so I think we have to define help first of all. So the research shows that it helps people live more at peace in their body. And it helps people reduce comorbidities associated with aging and extra weight. So in that definition, yes, it absolutely is applicable to people across the age spectrum. They've done specific research on intuitive eating and women in the postmenopausal phase and found that it dramatically reduced stress around food when they shifted towards intuitive eating. Now, if we say define it, will it help you lose weight? Like that's always the big question, right? And that one is more split. Yeah. For some people it does, and for some people it doesn't. And I would pin that on genetics because some folks who can get into their body and listen and like they're in a body that maybe they're not genetically set up to be in because they have been overeating or under exercising. When you get into intuitive eating, you generally just start practicing some of these healthy behaviors. So weight loss is a side effect. If you're talking about the postmenopausal woman who is like 10 pounds above where she wants to be, and will intuitive eating help you get there? That's not really the mission of intuitive eating.
Yeah. And I'd also think, so while we do want to make sure that our weight is lowered because we know there's risk of cancer and heart disease and diabetes and so forth, I also think that when you stop focusing on the weight in and of itself, that's when you're at a healthy weight. That's when you can live a healthy, full life. And I think that should be the goal with everyone, because everyone will not be a size 0. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes your body's just made to be a 12, whatever a 12 really means. So I think that's important that you made that difference in the term of helping us lose weight. You also talk about empowered eating. So is there a difference between intuitive eating and empowered eating?
Yeah. So empowered eating is my spinoff of intuitive eating. And I'll tell you how it came to be, because as a sports dietitian, the art of the balance of intuitive eating is like listening to your body and introducing gentle nutrition. And the goal is living at peace in your body. And I think most of us could do ourselves some huge favors and live there for forever, and just be happy. Now, as a sports dietitian, I started to work with some folks who needed to like tap more into that nutrition science piece. So the whole empowered eating model came because I was working with UFC fighters who had to make weight. You know, they get fined like thousands of dollars if they don't make their weight.
Right.
And I'm going, this girl is not going to intuitively hit her weigh-in, you know?
We
And
got
so
to
I
figure
had,
this out.
yeah. So I kind of had this like moral dilemma where I was like, I don't want to do something like I don't feel like is ethically appropriate, right? Like I don't want to tell her, oh, you have to just count every morsel of food. Like that just didn't feel right in my soul. So it's like, how can I operate within what I know to be really effective, but keep it with some of these goals in mind, you know, like and I know we're not all UFC fighters, but some people do like want to feel better in their body. You know, some people do have a race coming up. Some people are coming off a season of depression and binge eating was associated with that. And so they want to find themselves in a body that feels better. And so what I do is I take that balance. I call it listening to your body's biofeedback. So
Mm,
actually just hearing like, I call it like, what's the poop report? Like, what are your bowel movements
yeah.
doing? You know, what's your energy? And then balancing that with nutrition science. But the third piece that I add is your values. Like,
Mm,
what's most important to you and why are we doing this? And that's what drives the bus in our nutrition choices is what is most important to us. So in the case of the UFC gal, you know, obviously her career and what
right.
she's doing is very important to her. So while the chocolate was something she wanted, you know, her values and that upcoming weigh-in was what was driving the bus. So we layer those three on top of each other to have a more targeted nutrition approach, which is where it's a little bit different than intuitive eating, right? Like the goal of intuitive eating is being at peace with your body and reducing stress with food, which again, I think so many people can live there forever, but there are some that maybe want something different.
Right, right. It's so funny. Of what you said is super important. And I'm going to go back to the poop report only because during every episode, it comes up like looking at your stool, making sure that your gut health is aligned. Can you talk a little bit about why you specifically said that and the importance
Mm-hmm.
of gut health and our
Yes, I love that you want to talk about that. So many people don't.
it's so important. I'm like, did you
Really
look at your
important.
stool today? To my whole family.
I know. My kids will say, like, Mama, we call it snakes. Like, that's the healthy poop, right? They'll
Yeah,
come out and say, like, Mama, I got a snake today. And it's a very normal, like, discussion in my
I
house.
too. So
Good. Good. Yeah. So I am a huge advocate for gut health. And this has really been something the research has been so incredibly rapidly evolving over the last decade. And what we have found that I find most interesting is the connection between gut health and our mental health. So,
mm,
our gut health, and when I think of gut health, I'm referring to actually our microbes that live within our gut. So we have this like layer of bacteria within our gut. So they're in us, but they're not actually a part of us. It's a symbiotic relationship.
mhm.
I think of them as like our food interpreters. What we know is that our microbiome impacts how our food is processed. So, you know, when we take in food, if we have a healthy microbiome, we are going to absorb more nutrition from those nutritious foods than we would if we didn't have a healthy microbiome. And one of the things it does for us is it produces these byproducts that are sent through the vagus nerve to our brain that it's like they emit a tune to our brain. So in other words, I kind of think of it like if you're listening to music, you know, the music may not like direct your mood, but it can impact your mood. You know, if you have a happy song on, it's like you might not get so mad when you're driving in the car if somebody cuts you off. But if I'm listening to Wheels on the Bus
Yeah,
again from my kids,
I
like
know.
I might be more easily irritated, you know?
Round
And
and round,
oh
round
my
and round.
gosh. It's like no more. But that's what our microbiome does is it emits this tune through these byproducts that are sent to our brain and it impacts how our brain receives information. And then they've also found things like 90% of our serotonin is made in our gut. So our ability to actually process our happy hormones starts with how healthy our gut is. So my main interest in it is truly the mental health piece. It's also linked to immune function and hormone balance. So there's other layers to it, but that's why I think it's so important.
I love that you said that because a lot of people don't think about their gut health quite enough. And it's aligned to so many different things. The mental health piece is something that I've learned later in life. And it's super important and it's impactful. So thank you for talking about that.
Yeah.
So even though we're midlife, a lot of times this is a time where people start to have more time to get in a 5K race or more time to focus on their health. Why did you decide to focus on sports nutrition? And what are some unique components of sports nutrition?
Ooh, that's a good question. So, I mean, I think my interest in it was just because I've always been an athlete. I just gravitate towards athletics. But where it really, I think, started to become more of a science was as I started getting older and realizing that like the things that came naturally to me in my 20s and early 30s just weren't happening anymore. And so I was like, what can I do here, to continue to live the kind of active lifestyle I would like to live well into the rest of my life, however long that will be.
Right.
And sports nutrition is a huge piece of that, because if you add the workouts in without the nutrition, you don't get the same result, especially as a female. And so, yeah, I think it's really powerful is why I'm so fascinated with it. When we start pairing some of like the changes in workouts with targeted sports nutrition,
Mhm.
you actually counteract a lot of the natural things that happen with aging, like the loss of muscle mass or the fatigue, or you can change the way your hormones are changing, right? You can slow the progression. So I think there's just a lot of power in it.
I totally agree with that. That's a great way to summarize that. Again, let's focus on the perimenopausal and postmenopausal. Is there a science that tells us what women should be doing when it comes to sports nutrition? Because I'm in my 50s, should I be eating differently when I'm exercising? Or can I eat the same way that I did when I was in my 20s? I know that is not the
I know.
case, at
Wouldn't
least
that
not
be
for me.
lovely?
Yes, it would be.
Yes. No, there are some major changes, but I actually think like the perimenopause window it's a power window. The
Mm,
research shows us that we are more susceptible to changes in that window than any other time, whether it's postmenopause or when we're, just prior to perimenopause.
right.
So there's a lot of things that can happen there if we put some intentionality behind it. The three things that I really focus on are one's not nutrition, one's weightlifting, like
Mhm.
lifting heavy. Women who start training their muscle mass to turn over and rebuild in that perimenopausal stage set themselves up to go into menopause with a different body composition, and you have a different starting point that is going to carry you so much farther. So that's one. But in order to get those benefits, you have to have protein, right? You have to have adequate protein. And it's so interesting to me. Like men rock at eating protein.
I know.
It's they I had a guy eating 13 rotisserie chickens one time. Like that's too much, but
That's too much.
I know.
But yeah, I live in a household where protein is like the major point of conversation
Yes.
30% of the time. Like,
Yes.
talk about anything else. So I get it.
You get it. Those men, they seem to be good at it, but we women don't naturally, gravitate towards it as well. And my theory is that we're busy and we're taking care of so many things. We're multitaskers. Protein requires more energy to prepare and
Mhm.
to consume. It's not as easy as grabbing an apple or a granola bar.
Right.
Not that those aren't important, but the protein piece is just something we have to work a little bit harder to build in. So hitting protein in that perimenopausal phase is so powerful because again, now we're building ourselves up to go into menopause in a different, healthier, more healthy place.
Do you think the amount of protein varies based on each person, or do you give a window or a range rather?
So it kind of depends on the type of fitness they're doing. So
Mm,
if I have a female that's more cardio based, it would be, I usually go about 1.6 grams per kilogram of body weight. So it's a little bit lower. For those that are doing some weightlifting or body resistance training, going upwards of like 1.7 to 2 grams per kilogram of body weight.
Awesome. Love
Yeah,
that.
that's a good question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the third piece I was going to mention is getting adequate micronutrients. So looking at like making sure we're getting enough calcium, enough magnesium, so that our body can actually have the nuts and bolts of nutrition to support restoring that muscle mass and our bone health.
Eating before you exercise, eating after you exercise. I know your protein intake, even your carbohydrate intake is super important. What does that look like for that perimenopausal woman? What should they be eating? What are some ideas around that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the quantity is going to be specific to the individual and their goals. But in general, before anyone goes into a workout, we need carbohydrates on board. Like we have to have something. And I think for women, this is the trickiest, like if we work out in the morning, because we don't like to eat beforehand. But as a woman, one of the best things we could do is, even if it's like I work out at 5:30 in the morning, you better believe I'm having something beforehand, because when we give our body glucose before we go into a stress inducing environment, which is what a workout is, what we do is we're telling our body like, hey, we have enough on board. Go ahead and you can not give me as much cortisol. Like I'm okay. Right. And so we've reduced the cortisol spike, which is incredibly important for not promoting body fat storage. So having carbohydrate before, and I usually say like have carb with maybe like a little bit of protein or a little bit of fat, not too much, because we just want it to fuel the workout. So for example, like this morning, I had 2 dates with a little bit of peanut butter stuffed in those dates, and I like chocolate chips on my little date infused, protein infused dates. So a couple of those, which is giving me about 30 to 40 grams of carbohydrates and just a little bit of protein and fat from that peanut butter. Not a huge calorie hit, but it's setting me up to go into the workout with some fuel. Mm-hmm. And then afterwards, having at least 20 grams of protein with some carbohydrate. So that might look like, I'm a huge fan of those Fairlife chocolate milks.
Okay.
Have you seen these?
I have not.
Oh man.
Fairlife, but are they in a small container or just a regular?
So they're in individual bottles, and Costco can have them. Target has them sometimes. Yeah, they're just incredible because they have a higher, it's ultra filtered milk. So it has about 25 to 30 grams of protein. So a really heavy dose of protein, but it also has some carbohydrate, which we need both to refuel the workout. That balance, it allows it so the protein can go to the muscles and the carbohydrate can actually just refuel some of the glycogen that we use in our workout. Whereas if you just have like protein in water, we're not getting anything to refuel what we did. So the body actually takes that protein, processes it through the liver, and kicks out glucose anyways.
What if you don't want to just have a protein drink? If you're coming out of that workout and you want something to eat, any suggestions around that as well?
Yeah, I love Greek yogurt with some berries, or Greek yogurt with almonds. That Greek yogurt, again, is a great way to get the 20 grams of protein in a quick, easy on the go format. And then you can add some berries or granola or something like that to add some of the carbohydrate.
I stayed here for a while because a lot of people think, that's generalizing. I've heard women say that they don't eat before the workout because they want to lose more weight, or I just came out of a workout, I'm not going to eat right away because maybe there's more fat being burned. And we're actually working against the science of our body when we're not fueling our body before and after the workout. So that's why I wanted you to share that nugget of wisdom with folks, that you need to eat. It's so important. Like you have to eat. And it's hard. You're right. You're hard. Like I'll have stuff in the car. Sometimes I'm like, because if I even make it home, I know I'll forget, or I'll have an errand to run or something. Mm-hmm. So that meal prepping and being prepared for the before and after is just as important as the actual workout.
Absolutely. I love that you said that last piece. It is just as important as the actual workout. Like the training adaptations from those workouts don't actually happen during the workout. They happen after. Mm-hmm. And if we don't have the fuel to build it, we don't get the benefits, or we don't get nearly as many benefits.
Yeah, exactly. So what one thing every midlife woman needs to consider in regards to nutrition? What is that one thing?
Ooh, one thing. like, oh, it's so hard for me to pick one.
I know, right?
I honestly think it's like going right. I think it's going back to, I know we were talking about initially with intuitive eating is like, let's be a little bit nicer to ourselves
I like that.
and like change the expectation of what we need to do and how we need to present our bodies. Like, I'm sure you see this, Stephanie, like working with women who they just never feel like it's enough.
Mhm.
It's like it's this hard balance because they want more nutrition information, they want help, and they need it, right? Like we need to be educated.
Right.
And at the same time, there has to be a point at which we also find more gratitude than criticism about our body.
That's true. I like that. That's some great advice. Two more questions for you. What is the best advice you've ever received for your mind, body, or for your business?
The best advice. Probably the same thing.
I love it.
Yeah.
I'll take
Be,
that. I will
be
take
nicer to yourself. That and time. I
that.
think that's the other one is like incorporating the component of time into our journey. And I think, whether it's applicable to business or or your health, if women gave themselves a year to accomplish their health goals instead of like, 2 months, I think the journey would be so much more empowering and we'd feel less defeated. We'd have more stamina. Yeah, just that gift of time.
The people listening can't see me smiling, but I'm smiling extra hard because I just finished writing a new course. And at the there, I know I'm so excited about it, Mastering Menopause. And I'm doing the welcome now. And at the very end of the welcome, I'm like, do not feel overwhelmed by this. Give yourself time. Like I was sick for 2 years and it took a year for me to recover, but that was like 50 years of stuff that I needed to
Yes.
work out in my body. So I love that you just said that. And that is the perfect, perfect, perfect piece of advice. Give yourself time, give yourself grace during this process. So, yeah, yep. So, our audience is sitting in the middle. What is one? You've already answered this, I think, but do you have another bit of advice, no cost, that they can do to help them control the change?
As they go through it.
Yeah.
Well, this one's really easy. This is something I think everybody can do. One of the nutrients that we don't get a lot of is omega-3 fatty acids.
Mm.
And omega-3s are so great for our gut. They're even better for our mental health. And I'm all for obviously like optimizing mental health. I think life is stressful. We got to do everything we can to take care of our mental health. And change is stressful. Like going through those seasonal changes within our body is stressful. So if everybody added 1 tablespoon of ground flaxseed to their day, they would hit 100% of their daily omega-3 needs.
Awesome. Had some this morning in my protein.
Awesome. I love it. you can check that box.
That's some great advice. Great, great advice. Jess, I'm so excited that you took this opportunity to be with me. And I want folks to know how they can get in contact with you and how they can work with you. Can you let us know?
Yes, thank you so much for that. So I'm on Instagram as Jess Brown RD. I also have a podcast. It's called Feel Her Awesome, which you're going to be on here in a few weeks. I'm so excited to pick your brain. And yeah, I do have a course in the empowered eating model. It's called the Empowered Eating Method, and all that can be found on my website, jessbrownrd.com.
Once again, Jess, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Everyone, thanks for listening to Hello Hot Flash, where we help you control the midlife change. Make sure to check out the show notes for links to any subjects that we covered today and also to get in contact with Jess. And you can also find health and wellness information on hellohotflash.com. Here's to your health.